the AI in Research Operations Network. And for those of you who are joining us for the very first time, AIRON is a global community of professionals supporting research, and our aim is to explore how AI can be used responsibly and effectively across research operations to support research impact, innovations, and of course benefit the public. Through AIRON, we bring together people from universities, research organizations, professional services, and the wider research ecosystem to share experiences, explore practical use cases, and build capability for the responsible use of AI in research operations. Today's panel discussion, it focuses on an issue that it's becoming increasingly important across the sector. As we look ahead of REF 2029, the sector is now facing a critical question. How can AI help reduce the burden of research assessment while preserving trust, transparency, and fairness? Today's panel brings together leading voices in research evaluation, data science, and REF leadership to explore how AI is actually being used today and what responsible adoption might look like in the future. Our discussion will touch on several key themes. I hope we touch on all of them. The first one is where AI is already being used in REF preparation, the balance between human judgment and automation, then how we can ensure trust, transparency, and accountability for in AI-assisted processes, whether unequal access to AI tools could create competitive imbalances between institutions, and then finally, what skills and capabilities the sector will need as we move forward REF 2029. I'm absolutely delighted to welcome the excellent panel with us today. First, we are joined by Dr. Elizabeth Gad, Head of Research Culture and Assessment at Loughborough University, Chair of the iNorms Research Evaluation Group, and immediate past Vice Chair of COARA. Liz is widely recognized for her leadership in responsible research assessment and is a co-author of the influential report, Harnessing the Metric Tide. We're also joined by Dr. Helen Young, Associate Director of Research Excellence at University of Bristol and Professional Services Lead for REF 2029. Helen works closely on responsible research assessment and on the use of AI in digital technologies in REF submission development. And finally, it's not a new face to AIRON, Professor Mike Tewell, Professor of Data Science at the University of Sheffield and one of the leading experts in quantitative research evaluation and large language models. Mike has led several projects examining the role of AI in peer review and research assessment and is the author of Quantitative Methods in Research Evaluation. So we have a fantastic group of speakers to help us explore this complex and rapidly evolving topic. Before we begin, just a couple of quick practical notes. Yes, your microphones and cameras are switched off, as many of you have realized. If you have any questions to our panelists, please add them to the Q&A section that is in the upper ribbon, and we'll bring them to discussion later on. It is also worth mentioning that all of the questions you put in will be answered, not only what we managed to answer today, and we'll answer them also after the event and distribute the whole summary via newsletter. You're also welcome to use chat to share interesting resources or link and connect with other people. Just a quick note, this session is being recorded and we'll share written summary and highlights from discussion via newsletter with the AIRON community. And all the links you can find if you scroll it up, the first chat in a chat section will help all the links you are looking for inside. Okay, with that, let's begin our discussion. And I'm really looking forward to hearing the perspective of our panelists. So let's start with I think this is a very good opening question. So we are already seeing AI tools being used in ref preparation different ways, sometimes quite openly, sometimes it's more quietly, not always with crystal clear governance around it. So I was wondering, from what you have seen across the sector, where is AI already being used in ref preparation today, formally and informally? And there is a little spin to this question as well. I just wonder, while you answering this question, how does this tell, what does it tell us about sectors' readiness, risk appetite, and where the real opportunities might be? Not quite sure. Is someone going to move forward? Otherwise, I would, yeah, Helen?
Okay, I'm happy to start.
Yeah.
I suppose the first thing that I wanted to kind of begin by saying is that it's kind of not new, right? The use of digital technology in ref is not new. And I suppose for several cycles now, institutions have relied on spreadsheets, dashboards, analytical tools to support submission development, becoming increasingly sophisticated and in some areas very sophisticated with machine learning. In Ref 2021, aware of those deterministic tools, sometimes statistical machine learning being used to sort, classify outputs, analyze them in different ways. But I suppose the difference is that they were used to organize information, identify patterns, but they didn't generate narrative text or make evaluative judgment. So I suppose that is kind of partly why we're now talking about this with increasing, I suppose, either kind of delight or anxiety. So what's changed is the capability and scale. And I suppose I'm seeing and hearing, and not always about actually what people are doing, but what they're hoping to do or tentatively thinking about, being used in sort of, for instance, drafting support. And I don't just mean narrative kind of case study writing or our narrative spree statements, but things like, you have to write an awful lot of committee papers and strategy documents and reports for ref preparation. And actually, that's quite a lot of work where using Gen AI intelligently can really help and can bring consistency, can bring a really clear communication of things that sometimes you either don't have capacity to do, the competency to do, or simply just the time to think it through carefully. So there's that side of it, but there's also synthesizing information from identified sources. Again, this isn't about just putting a prompt into something and saying, tell me, give me all kind of stuff around this. It's about saying intelligently, I know I've got this, this, and this. It's a lot of information. Can, as a first kind of sweep at this, I identify some themes that are coming out and places to identify and explore further by me actually looking into it. Identifying metadata gaps, that's talked about a lot in terms of outputs and how can enhance what we do by looking at stuff we've never been able to look at before because of the complexity and scale of it. And then kind of modeling submission configurations. Most institutions will be doing this in some way, have done it for a while, is getting more sophisticated, and the potential for it is greater. So I think experimentation's already happening, often driven by workload pressure, which is, again, what drives it is probably part of the concern. What are we trying to gain from doing it? For me, it can be just as much about enhancement of what we do than it is about reducing burden or gaining efficiency, right? Different elements of this could be, we can do more now. So actually there's more work because we know we can do this thing that will actually increase the rigor, robustness of what we do and our understanding of stuff. So definitely a step change. I think the key thing for me is around the transparency and maintaining clear human accountability. And we'll come on to that more in the other questions. So I'll leave it there. But yes, it's being used tentatively and often without the governance around it that would make it kind of most effective.
Yeah. Thank you, Helen. Let's have a little question to you on this one. So, especially in terms of using AI informally, is this a signal that the policy and culture haven't quite caught up yet? Or it's simply natural phase as institutions adapt to new technologies?
I think there's definitely a policy gap. So there was a report that came out recently from colleagues at Bristol on the use of AI and ref, and that showed, that of the institutions that they surveyed, there was a dearth of policies across the sector, and everyone is scrabbling to catch up with that. I think obviously the challenges there are writing policy for a rapidly changing technical environment. I think Bristol is probably one of those institutions that's ahead of the game, and Helen could perhaps talk to us a little bit about some of the stuff they've been doing practically at Bristol. Loughborough University, where I work, their policy on the use of AI in research more generally, because obviously the use of policies around the use of AI in teaching are much further developed. But our work around AI in research and AI in ref is still ongoing. And there was a good piece in Wonky this week from Will Holloway, who were talking about the introduction of their policy around AI in research, and which made a really important, helpful point, I think, around the importance of this being values-based. And as Helen intimated, I think we do need to really kind of go back a few steps really and think about what is it that we actually value in order to kind of frame how we're using AI in ref and in every other aspect of our university activity.
Yeah, I agree. There is still a lot of learning. Thank you so much, Helen. Let's move quickly to another topic. One of the promises of AI is that it could reduce the workload involved in ref preparation. Helen just discussed this as well, but this raises a very important question. Should AI remain strictly a decision support tool in ref, or are we already perhaps unintentionally moving forward some degree of automation in evaluation? So it's always, we use the human in a loop, but in practice, is it just a comforting phrase, or is it something that really will give us a control? Mike, I just wonder if you can maybe take this question, if it's okay with you.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Anna. So I think human is in the loop is really important, partly because the AI isn't accurate enough to replace humans if they're doing if the humans are doing a good job. The trickier thing is that often I think the humans are too busy or not really expert enough to do what they're asked to do. So in my own department, we have many academics who are unique in the sense that no one else in the department really can understand their work well enough to guess what score it will get in the ref. So we do have to take into account the fact that the humans are fallible, and for any particular task, the pool of expertise might often not include the people that actually could evaluate what they're asked to evaluate properly. So there is a limitation on the humans, but I think it's still important to include humans there, because otherwise we're moving to a system where we're working for the computers, and if we know we're going to be evaluated by computers, even if they're statistically more accurate than the humans, then we're going to start working towards what the computers want. So we will be doing research not necessarily like research into making computers more powerful and into our masters, but research into trying to do things that we know that the computers will like, that we know that the large language models will like. So people will try and game the system, trick the system, and then it turns into it'll deflect the purpose of research. So I think this already happens to some extent with impact factor chasing, high impact factor journal chasing. That deflects us from our core goal of doing good research and citation chasing. But this is another dimension where we can be deflected from the core goal of knowledge development and impact generation by chasing another target. So that's a worry for me.
Yeah. Thank you, Mike. So it's kind of, I think the problem is to see this boundary between where the AI is acceptable to use in decision support, and also where is kind of unacceptable substitution of expert judgment as well. Lizzie, I have a question to you. REF relies heavily on the legitimacy of peer review. How can we protect values while also responding to the very real workload pressures around research assessment?
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that AI doesn't peer review because it's not a peer. It's not a human. And I think, we get into, just as a bit of a side point, we get into trouble if we, ascribe humanness to something that isn't human. And I think that is a big sticking point with AI. Peer reviewing isn't valued because of the review always, but because of the peer. People want to be seen and they want to be valued and they want their work to be seen and valued. So I think those kind of seeking faster peer review because of the volume of stuff to be reviewed might be coming at this problem from the wrong end. We should instead perhaps be asking, whether we peer review too much. Does everything need peer reviewing? What does peer review actually add to this process? Is it always adding? Are there other ways that we can do that assessment? And whether that there is too much to peer review, i.e. do we produce too much stuff in the first place? And I know in terms of REF, there is, it has decided on the volume of outputs that need reviewing. Is that right? Could we review fewer outputs and still come to similar conclusions about the quality of research? Could there be kind of random selection? My colleague at Loughborough University is writing something at the moment about the extent of stuff which is peer reviewed prior. It's already peer reviewed often, and then we review it internally in order to identify whether it's suitable to go to REF for peer review, for further peer review. So the extent that we're reviewing and over reviewing and repeat reviewing content, ultimately driven by REF is significant. So I think there's a bigger question than the AI question here around what we peer review, how much we peer review, whether stuff always needs to be peer reviewed, and whether we can perhaps think more holistically about this and do a better, more proportionate job.
Thank you. Helen, I have a question to you. From a REF integrity perspective, what would be the warning signs that automation has gone wrong here in the process?
I've got a few things that kind of like were warning signs for me, but just to kind of preface that with the fact that for me, the real risk of isn't the technology itself, it's the kind of lack of transparency around its use and the nervousness around it, or the lack of a kind of easy way. Like Lizzie said, we don't want to create lots and lots of added work for people, but what's proportionate to mean that we can actually govern this and give people the space to talk about what they want to do, experiment, and gain that kind of approval to do it confidently and with the support they need. So I suppose for me then, if we can't explain how something was developed, kind of what informed it, how it was reviewed, for instance, we undermine the trust. So and I think Lizzie mentioned our focus at Bristol at the moment is piloting a kind of pragmatic governance-led approach. So guidance on responsible use of AI and other digital technologies, coming back to my point about it's not just AI and it's not just Gen AI, so that we are really working through each use case. So we have a pro forma and we're going to pilot the use of that to say, this is rapidly developing. What we want to use it for, we don't know at the moment. We couldn't give you a whole long list and just get approval. So how do we embed that in a pragmatic way to say, you think of something, tell us about it. We will give you our critical view. And if we're content, you can move forward confidently. So in terms of the answer to your question then, if it's gone too far, then you've got decisions primarily justified by system output. You've got no audit trail explaining tool use, and you've got a loss of disciplinary nuance. If you can't see the human reasoning clearly articulated independently of the tool, then I think that's a warning sign.
Thank you, Helen. Mike, I'm just wondering, like, from you, because you have more research experience as well, do you have like a good use case for using AI in research assessment? Like one simple use case, like people will want to do something So on the practical side, would you be able to share one simple use case?
Yeah, so one use case would be during the internal ref evaluations, when we have outputs that we have to score and we have no one who has competence to assess them, then a guess from the AI is better than nothing. So so the advantage of the AI is the large language models specifically is that they're not experts on anything like a human is, but they're broadly competent on everything. So you can give it something that you wouldn't understand, that no one in the university maybe understands except the author, and it'll have a fair go at assessing it. So that's the big advantage. So I'm sure every department looking at their ref submissions will have a few that they have literally no idea whether it's brilliant or terrible, or maybe somewhere they have two experts. One expert says this is brilliant and the other expert says this is awful, and then where do you go from there? So so when there's uncertainty due to lack of expertise or just complete disagreement between two experts, then I think it's useful. Then it can be useful.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on to another very important area. So if the use of AI in ref preparation is going to expand, and it's going to expand, trust becomes absolutely critical. So what kind of practical governance mechanism do we need to ensure transparency, auditability, accountability when AI is used in ref-related activity, both at the institutional level and potentially at the panel level? I'm not quite sure who would like to come forward to answer this question. Who? Maybe Helen, you at Bristol. I was just wondering.
I suppose I already started, didn't I? maybe say a little bit more about that in terms of kind of the practical application. And it speaks to what Mike was talking about, really, because it's exactly those kind of use cases, very specific, and showing what we're trying to do is help guide people through a series of questions that help them kind of articulate the need, but come up with a kind of a reasonable process and something that's very clearly shown of this is the tool we will use in this way, and where the human reasoning comes in. So it's not that, you know, if someone puts a use case in, then the Ref Oversight Board has to look at everything that comes out of that and kind of, you know, scrutinise everything that's then being done with it. We might look and ask for kind of some kind of input to understand what's gone on and review, but it's essentially about just giving the tools, I suppose. I mean, it comes on the back of, to be honest, a simple thing about just saying to people, please, can you articulate how you go about review? In the old school fashion, how do you do your peer review? And surprisingly, that doesn't get recorded very often. So it's just an extension of that to say, this is, you know, there's a lot of good work. There's a lot of areas where people struggle because they don't know how to grapple with the task they've been given. Beginning to articulate within reason. We're not talking massive documents. Having support for people to do that where needed. I think that's the start, right? It's that honest, how we work, how we want to communicate, not only within the university, but to those people whose work's being assessed. So that's responsible assessment. It's transparency of the processes and how we're going about it. And this extra step of where there are things people don't understand, where there's potential for it to be black box, we need to be even more careful and be prepared to spend more time articulating what we're doing and reflecting on how that's gone and what we might be missing, or kind of just unintentionally creating a whole new load of problems, as well as the opportunities. I think Mike's told us a lot about the opportunities in the last session too.
Yeah, thank you. I think the whole question just basically that I think with the government is always the very first important question: can I disclose the use of AI? Right? There is sometimes not like a clear guidance as well, clear governance. People say, well, it maybe will produce negative bias as well. I'm just wondering, Helen, as well, so how might REF guidance strike the right balance between allowing institutions some flexibility to innovate while and using AI with this, while still maintaining clear standards that protect trust and integrity?
Was that to come back to me? Sorry.
Sorry, I looked at Lizzie.
Lizzie, I thought so. Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry, I was assuming that Helen was going to answer that question, so I didn't pay a lot of attention. So the question's about disclosing AI use.
Yeah, it's disclosing AI use, but also looking at the institution, how they can allow how the institution can allow themselves some flexibility to innovate and using AI while still maintaining clear standards and protect trust and integrity. What is the right balance?
Well, yeah, I don't know. I think we probably need to take a bit of a step back and ask some kind of bigger questions here, really, about you know, our value. Well, it's going back to our kind of value-led piece, really. You know, our value-led approach to the use of AI in assessment. You know, because I think there's you know, some big questions that we need to ask. If we really that often we kind of make assumptions that we can do something equitably when we should perhaps go back a few steps and think, can we actually do this equitably? If we really care about equity, can we ensure that, rather than assuming that we can ensure equity, and then and move on to that how can question. And I think that sustainability is another big issue here. You know, if we really care about sustainability, can we ensure that our use of AI is sustainable before we move into these kind of more practical questions of how can we do that, and how can we then balance our kind of approaches and innovate in this space and develop these standards that kind of protect trust and integrity. I think there's kind of, often we kind of move to this the how can we do it before we ask a bigger question of can we actually do that, given the limitations of this technology, given what we know about the kind of the biases inherent within it, and the kind of the resources that it takes up in order to use it. So I think there's those sorts of questions I think I would ask first.
Thank you, Lizzie. Mike, I just wonder your opinion on this. Is it use of AI in REF sustainable? Would you say, as for now, and you know, everything can change in a couple of weeks, but now, what is your opinion?
I think it's tricky. I think at the moment we need to be just very careful with how we use it until we understand the biases and the systemic effects better than we do. So I think it's fairly safe to use it in mild decision support purpose, but definitely not safe at all to be replacing humans with the large language models at the moment. And another risk is that we use it without knowledge of how the systems work. So, for example, the large language models give higher scores to some units of assessment than others. And they also have a very strong tendency to give a 3-star score. If you enter a publication in most units of assessment, the normal score is a 3-star. So even if it's a 4-star output, you'll probably get a 3-star in most units of assessment. So you need to be careful with the way that you interpret the results. So the simple, obvious way to do it would be to enter these outputs and look at the score, but that's not helpful. You need to have a system in place which gets multiple scores per article and then compares that article with all the other articles you've got, and then you start to get some useful information. So we really need to use the information effectively. We need more system support to get us the most useful data, and then unfortunately, with all the system support, we still have to use it very cautiously in a decision support role.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's kind of AI, it's useful, but you definitely have to have a safe system in place to run and understand what it's happening and how it's contributing to certain decisions. So another issue that often comes up, it's equity. How real is the risk that uneven access to AI tools or uneven capability to use them effectively could advantage some institution over others in REF 2029? Not everybody has the same resources. A smaller, bigger university. Um, so this is question to Lizzie. Uh, have you potentially seen from the sector, maybe observed the conversation and witnessed this discrepancy of building their own AI infrastructure by certain institutions and their worries as well?
Yeah, I think this kind of uneven access to tools is a very, very real risk. Obviously within the UK, but also globally, more importantly. And again, that REF and AI report, which did focus on Russell Group universities, but did have a number of non-Russell Group universities that they kind of interviewed, did really find that there was a huge gap between the haves and the have-nots in this space. Technologies costs, training costs, time to engage in these new technologies costs, time to attend events like this costs. And not every institution has the staff or the capacity in order to kind of engage. So, and those without kind of policies might be at risk from unhelpful use. And of course, we haven't had any guidance from REF on this yet. There is a real kind of risk of Matthew effect here. There's already a Matthew effect in kind of research funding and REF itself, within existing kind of QR and enhancing research culture funds, etc. And social capital also concentrates advantage amongst well-connected organisations. So I think, these equity risks do need to be surfaced. They need to be taken into consideration in assessment. There was a suggestion recently that there would be a two-tier REF when it came to SPRI, the strategy, people and research environment element, given that some institutions just wouldn't have had the capacity to engage with this new element. They didn't decide to do that in the end, but for good reasons, I think. But I think given the December announcements to changes to UK research funding to encourage kind of specialisation across organisations, the work around QR transparency, which might require kind of more reporting, I wouldn't be surprised if we perhaps saw more assessment specialisation too, which might help here. So, for example, the KEF, the Knowledge Excellence Framework, already uses clusters to recognise different types of university. Why not REF? Why doesn't the REF do that? Are we so dissimilar in terms of our engagement with kind of knowledge exchange, and so similar in terms of research? I don't think so. So I think there's mechanisms that we could use, but I think certainly we should be surfacing the level of financial and social capital that institutions have to help kind of perhaps level the playing field a little bit when it comes to this sort of assessment.
Thank you, Lizzie. Helen, I just wonder, based on just looking at the professional services, do you think that the tools that I can amplify the gaps between well-resourced and smaller institutions?
It's an interesting question, because I was just thinking as Lizzie was speaking about the fact that we've a lot of people and small to large institutions have prepared amazing REF submissions without even minimal use of digital tools, apart from their beloved spreadsheets. And so I think we can get lost in the whole thought that AI automatically will mean better. And actually, if we, the differentiator, if it is that we, it's going to be around whether we build transparent, well-governed workflows and invest in staff capability, there's a risk that the larger institutions, better resource ones, don't do that and actually take themselves down a tunnel, which means that they are not as focused, they are not don't have the human kind of input to form what can be really, for small institutions, incredible submissions because of that talent and ability to do it. So absolutely, I do think it's something we have to watch and guard against, and I'm not saying that, but I think we need to temper that with just realizing just what people are capable of already, and some really dedicated teams doing some amazing work. So yeah, differentiate for me really is this governance piece, and I think if we don't get on top of that, to allow that experimentation, but also that confidence to declare where we're using it. Because you asked a question earlier about, and REF might actually say, we have an expectation. You will say in a narrative statement or elsewhere where you've used REF, maybe even in your REF preparations more broadly. I think we expect there will be something. That's my expectation, something. It might be light touch, but there will be something. So we can't ignore this and, you know, and be prepared just to go along. We've kind of got to accept, but we just need to pay attention to what it's doing, how it's playing out, is the key thing. We can predict multiple outcomes, but are we paying enough attention regularly embedded in the way we work to really then mitigate properly in real time?
Yeah, I again completely agree. Mike, very quick question. So do you think like open source AI tools will level the playing field, or does institutional expertise and capacity matter more than access to the tools themselves?
Yeah, I think in theory, yes, but as Lizzie mentioned, you also need not just the tools, you need the human resources to develop the systems and to train the people to effectively use them. And I remember being in a REF 2014 event many years ago, and I was at Wolverhampton University, and I asked if I could give a talk addressing new universities at the event, and it was a big event with I think 98 people there. And they said, yeah, fine, yeah, great. Well, I saw one talk about new universities, and I looked down the attendance list, and there was no one at that REF event from a new university. They were all from existing universities, and I just didn't have the time or the money, the time really, to send representatives to a national event on the REF. So there's certainly a risk. So on the hopeful side, well, I'm one level hopeful anyway. I assume that the bibliometric providers will start to offer services involving large language models, which will mean that if they can solve the copyright issues, which are another big deal, then they'll be able to offer us bespoke solutions like the research information systems that I think most or all universities now have, which would take the development away from the university level and make it cheaper and potentially an advantage for the smaller, less resourced institutions.
Yeah, thank you so much. So basically, we need strong governance. Look what it's happening, and allow everyone access to the same tools. Basically, we are going to our last area of question, and that's for everyone listening in. I'm not quite sure if you put the question in the Q&A section. If you haven't done so, please put it now, because soon we'll answer your questions. So now we are coming to the answering the question that we have formulated at the beginning. So looking ahead of REF 2029, AI will likely play some role in the preparation and analysis of submission. So if AI is going to reduce the burden without eroding trust, what kind of AI literacy, leadership, capability and professional development will REF leaders, professional services teams, and the panel members need? Lizzie?
Yeah, really good question. Again, there were quite a lot of good recommendations in the REF and AI report on this question. To me, I think, coming from the world of responsible research assessment, there's a lot in research assessment reform literacy that already helps us here. I think, there's a lot of principles from the responsible research assessment movement, the responsible metrics movement, that can help us in our thinking about the use of AI in assessments. So the INONS Research Evaluation Group that I chair has developed something called the SCOPE framework, which helps evaluators kind of frame their use of all assessment technologies, including AI, and it's an acronym, and S is about starting with what we actually value about our assessments, going back to the pieces I was talking about earlier, and C is around considering the context in which assessments happen, O is about exploring all of our options, P is around probing for those unintended consequences and discriminatory effects. And I think there's the big question is always not can we do this, but should we do this? What might those unintended consequences be? Not all of which can be foreseeable, I get, but usually with some thinking and some thought experiments, you can kind of understand what the consequences might be, and then that helps you kind of think about how you might address them. There's this great expression that we can apply to a lot of technologies, but they make a great servant and a terrible master, and AI is certainly in that category. It can be extraordinarily helpful, useful. It's solved some big problems that humans have been unable to solve. It can level playing fields where everyone has equal access to the tools, as Mike has mentioned, but it can also take us down terrible paths, and there's all sorts of and some of the biggest kind of doom mongers in this space are those significant AI leaders, the Geoffrey Hintons, the kind of Mustafa Suleimans, who have thought this through to the end and recognise that actually this could all go horribly wrong. I don't want to cast a negative shadow over today's session, but we do need to accept and acknowledge that and think this through carefully. What is a responsible way to engage with this technology?
Thank you, Lizzie. Helen, from the REF delivery and assurance perspective, what capabilities do professional services teams most urgently need to manage AI use consistently and safely?
I suppose carrying on from what Lizzie was saying, for me, the number one is always responsible practice. So getting people to understand that, the governance, ethics, data protection, but also clearly those kind of responsible research assessment, not just the principles, but in practice, in your context. So in any context, it has to be a really dedicated kind of approach to this in terms of really getting people to understand it within their context, in the relationships they have and the pieces of work they're being given to do. Because sometimes that's why we've come up with this kind of approach of a pro forma. Unless we're working it out in practice, actually it's really hard to figure out what we're doing. And then it can become a kind of, that's where the whole policy and practice divide comes, is because people just don't know how to implement that in their everyday, slightly messy, time pressured kind of existence. So I think, yeah, that is really critical for me. Practical literacy is obviously an obvious one, but that understanding limitations of strength, as well as how to actually use the tools, good prompt engineering kind of, and that includes, again, it's not about a one-time delivery or a kind of guide sheet. It's about conversations. It's about, here's how I used it. These are the things I found. So I think it's that human element, again, of learning and growing together in it, and that critical engagement. So that's another, it is a real skill. And as you're at different stages of your career, you may be able to do that more easily. I worry for the people coming fresh into REF and research management who maybe, haven't known the workplace without AI. And actually, we need to invest time and energy in those people to help them develop those skills that means they can critically engage with what's coming out of AI tools, because they know how to do it themselves. So even on the point about writing committee papers, I have written so many. I feel confident getting Copilot or ChatGPT to help me because I know what I would have written. It can just help me do it quicker and potentially see gaps and make it more strategic. So yeah, lots of capability needs, but those are the three main categories, I'd say.
Yeah, thank you, Helen. I completely agree. So there is a factor of using AI, playing, comparing, the different outcomes with your colleagues and so on. So there's a lot of learning by doing. Mike, I have the final question to you. What level of AI understanding do assessors realistically need in order to critically interpret AI-assisted outputs without either overtrusting them or dismissing them outright?
Yeah, I think we really need just experience with using them, some practice with using them. So probably training sessions ought to include examples where the AI is completely wrong, and so that the humans don't automatically don't follow the tendency to trust them because they're so plausible. So I hope in the future people just naturally become more critical of the AI because they see it making mistakes. But certainly in the training we need to incorporate that so that that's understood in the context of the task that's done. So it's really from my perspective, it's a kind of a probability thing partly. So the large language models have depending on your field, a moderate probability of giving you a good result, but they can still give horrible results occasionally. So you can still put junk into them, and they'll say this is wonderful, and the opposite. So and people hate probability. So if it was down to me, I'd teach everyone probability, but that's not going to happen. So we just need experience of seeing the good and the bad, and to help us build our critical judgment of the outputs that we get.
Yeah, a critical judgment. It's really, really important. But as I said, my experience, you have to practice a lot, and know kind of where the output doesn't really meet the expectation, where it's basically something you would not consider yourself as a human. Okay, final question to all of you. If institutions could invest in just one capability over the next 2 years to prepare for AI-enabled REF assessment, what should that be and why? Helen?
I mean, it's probably fairly obvious from my answers already, but I think investing in that building of simple, consistent documentation and review processes for digital tool use, for me, would be the critical thing, because the lack of transparency kind of means that all these things we've talked about and that development of critical thinking and across where it needs to be can't really happen if you don't know what's going on or you don't feel confident sharing it or declaring it, which is an issue, right? People need to stop worrying and feel able to put it in places they might not normally have done. I mean, to give you an example, Lizzie, you're like this, drafting our Quora action plan, I am declaring that I have used Gen AI to help me in thinking this through, not as the kind of, not taking full responsibility for it. It is me and others doing the work, but I'm not being asked to do that by Quora particularly, but I know it should be declared, right? So this is me stepping in and thinking I might get in trouble from Lizzie. But yeah, so that is what I would say, because if we can explain how tools are used, how human judgment was applied, I do believe AI can enhance practice and reduce burden. So it's not all about reducing burden, it can enhance our practice in defined areas responsibly, but we need to kind of commit to the time and energy it takes to govern that well.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you, Helen. Mike?
I feel like a one-trick pony, but I'd like a system to process the outputs if copyright is if copyright can be negotiated and deliver useful, actionable information to the people that are doing the ref reviews. Probably not the individual academics doing the reviews, but the people that are managing departmental level reviews that can then use this information in conjunction with the human reviews associated with appropriate training. That'd be my top of my wish list.
Thank you, Mike. Lizzie?
I'm a one-trick pony as well, because I'm going to talk about responsible research assessment. And if we're looking at preparing for AI-enabled REF assessment, we should chunk up a little bit and think about skilling people up into the use of responsible approaches to all forms of assessments. And obviously REF is just one of those. And in particular, going back to the scope framework, the P of scope, this kind of probe stage, we really do need to do, perhaps all institutions commissions REF itself a proper independent quality impact assessment on the use of AI in assessment. You know, the impact on humans, individual humans and humanity as a whole, I think should be central to our consideration of this technology, as with all of the others. So I think that's the area of capability and skill that I would really love to see a greater focus on.
Thank you, Lizzie. So thank you so much for sharing your expertise, your opinions. I think it's a lot of good advice to everyone working on REF across different institutions, and also about very wise word and warning as well, where this can go wrong. And especially, we always say, we human in the loop. So this is now our opportunity to put ourselves in a loop and carefully design the whole process. I think this very interesting discussion is going to continue. I wonder where we are going to be in 1 year time, and we can compare. But thank you so much, and let's move on to the question from the audience. I hope there are a couple of questions. Yes, we do. I hope it had refreshed. There's one question from Sana. Stephen Hill suggested in Hive session earlier today that Research England are working on AI policy statement. Does anyone know more about this?
Only that I've heard a similar thing without detail, and I'm just hopeful that it is proportionate given everything else and the various bits of guidance we're still awaiting on and need to figure out and operationalize. I suspect it will be, but I think they're just realizing they need to direct institutions, because lots of people have questions about it and want to feel confident in what they're doing and don't want to have to be hiding stuff. So yes, good question, and I think that is increasingly what we're expecting.
Thank you, Helen. Question from Alina. I'm interested in the impact of researchers on large language models involved in research evaluation in this context and others, such as journal publishing. The LLMs will be trained on existing high-ranking journal articles and review others on that basis. How does this impact on interdisciplinary research, novel use of methods or theories? What could be the potential impacts? Mike, it kind of, I think it's a good question for you.
Yeah, I think that the most influential data that the large language models will be trained on will be reviews of academic text. So it won't necessarily be the high impact journals. It'll be more the journals that publish their reviews and other sources of information that include reviews. So maybe from blog posts, but where academic research is reviewed, I think that will be the most influential, because that's where the patterns for reviewing will come from that the large language models use. So it doesn't worry me particularly about high impact journals. So it's more worrying that there'll be a tendency to focus on things that are common and reviewed. And so to get a good score from a large language model, maybe you have to do things that are in the past have been commonly well reviewed. So there, it seems likely there'll be some kind of bias against novelty. Yeah, so there will be, they will pick up some kind of biases, but it's not the same ones that we currently have, I think, in terms of journals anyway.
There's also comment by Xan, the UK could train their own, can UK train their own language model instead of having to rely on the training techniques data of private companies? You're hearing a lot of this. People are saying, well, there will be one AI, big AI per country. Mike, is it possible? Is it?
Yeah, I don't know. It's not the easiest thing to do is take an existing AI model and then customize it for your own needs. So that's technically much less challenging, relatively straightforward really for a computer scientist. But it is a big job to create one from scratch, and you need a lot of resources. So I don't know how realistic that is for the UK.
Yeah, thank you. Next question from Matteo. We tend to talk about AI helping us with research evaluation as we know it, but research evaluation is currently far from flawless. So we are not simply repeating the same mistakes, just enhanced by AI. What is the opinion of the panelists about using the changes that AI is bringing about as an opportunity to change research evaluation in the first place? Really good. Is that even possible, and should we be working towards it? Lizzie, would you like to take this one?
Yes, I would. You're absolutely right, Matteo. A lot of the arguments against artificial intelligence can also be leveled against human intelligence. Bias, incomplete assessments, poor quality assessments, and also to an extent in terms of automated automatic assessments. There's a lot of kind of gut reaction going on when articles are assessed. They're looking, we know often at perhaps things that even if they're not looking at journal impact factors or journal titles, those things are so well embedded in their heads, in their psyche as assessors, that they are using those indicators, which might be why actually some of Mike's results are what they are, because the human assessors are using the same kind of instincts that perhaps the artificial intelligence is using to make those same judgments about those same outputs, right? And I do think, that in one sense AI came a little bit too soon, because obviously it's being trained on human decisions that we are currently working in the assessment reform movement to try and improve by use of better training and technologies and understanding about how we can do this better. But obviously AI is being trained on past decisions, past scores, past data. So it's kind of replicating those decisions, which may actually not be the correct ones. But it is certainly an opportunity for us to rethink what good research assessment looks like, particularly going back to what it is we actually value. So a lot of the worries about the use of AI, is it transparent? Are we declaring that we're using it? Are quite operational kind of questions, which are more relevant for kind of a print world, if you like, a kind of than perhaps the more AI enhanced world. So I do think we need to really do a big piece of thinking around what it actually means to assess research, and what is research excellence in the age of AI, actually, anyway, before we then start thinking about how we go on to assess it. So yeah, good questions.
Thank you, Lucy. Next question is from Michelle. If an area of research is particularly niche, would AI have enough training data to be able to assess that area well, or would the best guess be okay? Mike.
So yes, I forgot that. Yeah, I think niche is okay. It's just if the style of niche is okay because the large language models don't understand anything, so they're just working on patterns, and they're making guesses based on the patterns of the language and what's claimed in the abstract, particularly. So yeah, more worrying is areas where the everything is so humanities. The large language models don't do particularly well in the arts and humanities, where maybe the creativity of the way you write is an important aspect of whether humans consider it to be high quality, and I think that would be very hard for large language models to pick up. So if everything is really trying to be unique in the way it's written, then the patterns just aren't there to be picked up.
Thank you, Mike. I think we can squeeze one more question. from Andrew, do the panel have thoughts on the effect of the current, often undisclosed AI used in research outputs, which will themselves be evaluated in a ref?
I can respond to that unless anyone else wants to.
Okay.
In perhaps a bit of a controversial way, I would ask you, why is that a problem? Why are we seeing problems here? Why is it a problem if someone has used AI in developing a research output? If someone's engaged with it and they have checked the content, it's and they are happy with the outcome, and they have adhered to their own institutional and publisher policies around the use of AI. Obviously AI is often used in the methods that are used to do the underpinning research, let alone the generation of the output. I would question why that's a problem, unless Mike and Helen or other people on the call can give me a good reason. I don't see that as a particular problem.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Very good answer. Okay, so we just kind of overrun by 1 minute, but it was a very good response. All other questions will be answered and sent to you via newsletter for that month, but just to allow panel a little bit of time to answer questions. It will possibly, the newsletter will come next week at some point. I'm not quite sure, in the beginning of March. With this, thank you so much, Lizzie, Helen, and Mike, for being a really good panel. I hope we can repeat the discussion in a couple of months and see where we are. And thank you for everyone attending this session and witnessing us as well. Please stay in touch with AI. Please connect with us and have a good afternoon, evening, morning to everyone that joined us today. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Anna.
Thanks, Anna.